not so much. But there's definitely something coming. Can you feel it? It's been watching us for a while. Talking to us, influencing our decisions, making art for us. Hell, I even heard Wendy's wants to hire it to take your late night burger runs. Guessing from this, you can probably guess what I'm talking about. AI. Now, I know this is not a new subject matter to talk about. In the last 6 months alone, we had this big boom of technology, from ChatGPT to Stable Diffusion, Dream AI, and about 100 other things. However, all these big leaps forward made me wonder, could AI animate? And I don't mean moving from A to B, I mean traditionally animate, with all 12 principles, animate in 3D and 2D. And my first thoughts of this topic were, yeah, probably, maybe. And that uncertainty bothered me. The more I looked into it, the more questions I had. So, as an average animator who's overweight, has bags under his eyes, and is addicted to caffeine, I decided to try to find out. With a basic knowledge of AI, I wanted to talk to people in the field of animation and get to know what people thought and what they believe could happen in the near future. Then, talk to some experts in AI and see if these concerns or theories had any validity to them. My name is Alex. Plant your assets in front of your screen, turn those ears on, and let's find out. Is this the boogeyman crawling up our beds, or just Sully trying to say hi? Is this a strange monolith towering before us, or a new tool to bring about human revolution? Is this a friend or a foe? Is it Judgment Day, or did we just fall asleep in front of the TV again? I don't know, but let's find out together in Animator versus the Machine.
Commencing. Begin.
All right, so we got Brian Blanchard here and Logan. Oh, I should have read your last name. That would have been smart.
Sorry, just go Logan.
Logan.
It's long. It's long and Austrian. It doesn't matter.
I'll say it's Schinbeckler. Is that close?
Okay, cool.
What is it?
It's completely just phonetic.
Schinbeckler. All right, cool.
Doesn't matter.
Schinbeckler. Perfect. All right, so I have a first question for you guys, which is essentially, what if you had to describe AI to someone who's been in a coma for 10 years? So like they went into coma in 2013. How would you describe AI? Starting with Brian.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah, I'm throwing you on the spot.
Yeah. I just got right into it.
Yeah.
If you had to simplify AI, it's a learning tool which is basically trying to... You screwed me up. You set me on the spot.
Perfect. I achieved the podcasting dream.
It's a computer artificial intelligence that is basically taking a lot of information in from different sources, and then based on either what your input is, pumping out either something similar to the same thing or trying to randomly create something new out of all of the inputs. So if you put a pile of images of dogs into it, you're not going to get a picture of a cat, kind of thing. Like, it's what you put in is what you're going to get out. So there's a lot of different people who will have different perspectives on it because of copyright and other things. So if I were to simplify this for somebody coming out of a coma, I guess I would say, God damn it.
Do you want? Yeah, I'm going to jump. So I'll.
Yeah, you get Logan to tag in if you want.
I'll tag you out for a second, Brian. So my analogy. I have an analogy because I've been talking, but I have.
Perfect.
I have been like playing around with it a lot, like both the large language models and the like visual models a lot. Not as much as some people, obviously, but quite a bit. And I've been more focused actually on the large language models, the like ChatGPT and stuff like that. And I have a good analogy for that. I don't have a great analogy for the visual stuff, but my analogy for the written one is it's a trillion monkeys at a trillion typewriters. And that's literally it. And that if you tell the monkeys, look, write me a paragraph description of War and Peace, and you have a trillion monkeys at a trillion typewriters, eventually, like in pretty short order, one of them is going to come up with just by pure statistical chance, they're going to have come up with a good description, a good paragraph summary of War and Peace. Now, obviously, it's not that simple because it's not just statistical. It's not just it is not just statistical chance. There is an element of it of going to look for data, but it is crucially all of it is just derivative. It's all just derivative. It cannot create, really. It looks like it can. Crucially, it looks like it can. But it actually can't. It actually can't. And my proof for the visual ones, and I haven't played with, I mean, this is the problem, right? Is we record this on a Tuesday and it'll be out of date by Thursday, right? Because it's moving so quickly right now. So I haven't played with the newest, Mid Journey 5.1 or whatever. But I've yeah.
With it.
And it's very cool. And listen, look, it's super cool. It's super. They're all really super interesting. I actually destroyed in the a couple of months ago. I burned out my old video card running. I've already forgotten Stable Diffusion, like running stuff through Diffusion on my computer. I destroyed an old video card just by burning it out.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, I've played with Midjourney. I've played with 8, 9 of the image creation ones. And I accidentally developed a test for all two tests for all of them that none of them succeeded at, which is 6-legged horse and blue fireball. Neither of those sound terribly complicated, right? But because there is no such thing as either of those, it cannot do them. Not a single one I've done has ever created me a 6-legged horse or a blue fireball. I've had blue flames next to baseballs. I've had blue metal balls that were on fire. I've had horses where one of its legs had 2 hooves. That was the closest one of them got. But it can't do it because it doesn't actually know what fire is. It doesn't actually know what legs are. It knows what a horse is. By a million monkeys know what a million images of a horse looks like. But it's this derivative thing, and it goes out and it finds examples of poorly labeled things and then smashes them together at random a billion times, trial and error, until it gets until it gets a result. And it gets better and better.
It's like those focusing pictures where like it takes an image and then just like unfocuses the image and then like tries to refocus it to whatever you need it to be. Yeah. And it's like, I hope for the best. But so my question is, if you want to make your 6-legged horse, is your sample size just too small? So say you did it like 20 times. Does it need 50?
It's about
100? Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So originally I screwed up my definition because I was going to go to flex of a definition, and you were like somebody who's straight out of a coma.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap, I can't use that. But it actually, the way people interpret how the AI is doing it for images is different than what people think. A lot of people think you get this giant bucket of pictures and it just mushes them all together. But it's actually, the way someone described it to me is, think of a valley. Think of a huge valley. There's river, there's trees, hills of different types. And you have like 100 of them all like lined up. And it starts to rain. The AI is the rain, and it knows when it comes in contact with a tree, how it reacts to it, the curve of which way it should go, and what it's going to end up doing when it touches grass, when it touches the water, the different effects that it's going to have is different for each thing. And it just memorizes which way they do the curves, which way they do the movement and reaction to whatever they're given as input. So when it takes an image, it's not actually memorizing all those pictures of Sonic and then making a new Sonic kind of thing. It's when it meets hard blue on this black square, which is, or black dot, which is the nose, this is what it should generally do. It should start above it being white, which is the eye of Sonic, and brown is the bottom of the mouth. It's basically building all these little scripts of where the lines should go, where the colors should go based on the input. So it's basically not keeping a collection of a million photographs, but all these little, if this, then do this. If this color, then do this. If this shape, then go here or turn here or kind of thing. And that's where all these mushed up, like ugly art ones were coming from. And with the more information, the more different images that it can practice on, like, oh, when this issue comes up, it's like if it's missing a stop sign, it knows, like, oh, we should stop at the stop sign kind of thing, and then look both ways and then go. And if you remove the stop sign out of all the images, the computer's not going to know you're supposed to stop before you drive through the intersection.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, your thesis is like AI is just memorizing, in your opinion, the line art versus understanding the anatomy of what it's doing.
It's not actually, as it takes in more input, it can better guess, because it's all guesswork. That's basically what it is. It's prediction of what should happen when this happens, when this happens. So that's where you get like the hands, which have been a nightmare for it, because hands are in a different position in every single photograph, but we're tagging them all as the word hand. And the computer's just like, okay, you got these monsters on your wrists that are always in a different shape. So it had so much trouble with figuring out hands is because when it sees the bend here, it turns up. And when it sees here, do fingers. But the fingers are in every single different direction.
Right.
So the prediction was just these mushes of 8 fingers or 10 fingers. It doesn't actually know the bones, and like there's only 4 fingers and there's only 1 thumb. It's just a pile of input lines that it's trying to basically predict what should follow. And as input got better and better, and I think I can't say this because I don't know the programmers, but I'm pretty sure they took extra time to focus on hands to get these things figured out.
Well, it's like go ahead, Logan.
I was just going to say,
no. That's pretty much
the relationships, and that's it. It doesn't know what fingers are, and that's why the 6 legs thing doesn't work, because it doesn't know what fingers are, and it doesn't know what legs are, because no one's told it. And all it knows is the relationship of of these pixels to these pixels, like Brian's saying, is like it doesn't even know that. It just has a statistical. It has these algorithms that go, well, if you collect these pixels in this pattern, in relationship to these types of pixels, and it's associated to this label, this is what the label of hand looks like. And as they get better, and as they make a point of refining, of like, actually, maybe up until that point, they hadn't taught the model, the AI model. And again, even AI isn't really accurate. It's not. But they hadn't maybe taught it about fingers. They taught it about hands. And so then they made a point of like, we really need to teach this thing about fingers.
Well, yeah. So like, just for your example with the horse, the computer is associating when hoof is connected to arm. It's kind of like the arm's connected to the shoulder. A shoulder goes into a torso, but you're asking for 6 legs, but shoulder goes to torso. So it doesn't understand.
That's even giving it too much credit, because it still doesn't know what a hoof or a leg or a shoulder is. It's the idea.
Right.
It understands that a horse can look like this collection of that the label horse is associated to this collection of pixels, this many different variations in this many different ways. And
it's not always tags as well, because it's color. I didn't mean
sure,
to cut you off there. Sorry.
I'm just trying to I'm trying to simplify it. I'm trying to like generalize. Yeah, I'm just generalizing.
Sure.
Obviously,
Sure.
there's more to it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not a programmer. I'll just say now, because
Sure. None of us are.
I'm sure there is an AI, like somebody who literally made like Midjourney's, like would listen to this and go, "You
That's
guys
not
are
how any
so
of that works."
off. It's not even
Well,
funny."
and that's what
No,
I sort of
yeah.
focus on, like trying to define its results, right? Which is saying that it's a thing
Right.
that can only be derivative. So even if I wanted six-legged horses, you would have to teach it about six-legged horses. But because there
Right.
aren't a
So
million
it's more of
pictures
a matter of
labeled as
training.
six-legged horses, it can't do it.
Yeah.
It can't.
So
actually
is it a limit? So is it a limitation on the software, or is it a limitation on the training?
both?
You
Both.
think?
It's both.
Both.
It's a fundamental problem combined with a limit of experience. I'm sure eventually they will refine it, and it may not even be that long. You know,
No. Yeah.
Well, at the speed it's
Yeah.
going.
I mean,
It's excelling quickly. Yeah.
I remember a quote that was, an artist sees the absence of an idea they want to convey, and then they create it, whereas the AI looks at what already exists and
Yeah.
replicates.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it
Yeah.
can really do.
Like I was, like for the intro for the podcast, I talk about how I remember seeing, like, being fascinated by AI, but just seeing like it using that like simple like 11-second club rig, where it's like just the ball with the two legs. You see it all the time in like the 3D thing.
Oh yeah.
And like it was just it told the AI walk, like, figure out how to go from A to B, and there was a little divot, right? So it was trying to figure out how to walk, and then like of course it like pancakes the first time, first 12, 16 times, and then it figures out, okay, I gotta stick my leg out to take the first step, and that doesn't know how to do the second step. So it takes like another 50 tries, and then eventually it figures out how to walk, but it learns how to cheat, which is great. Where it does this front lunge, so like it has its front foot as like the pivot to crawl, and the back leg to anchor. So it's just like scuttling across like this, going across the screen. You're like, perfect. It counts as a walk technically, and you're like, all right,
Well,
sure.
the difference with ones like that, though, and they've been doing stuff like that, like, evolve, like, hey, here's a collection of bits, now make a six-legged insect or figure out how to whatever. And they've been doing the difference with those is that that model knows what it is, right? So if you give it a 3D model with a rig skeleton inside, part of the algorithm is it knows that it has legs with joints. It knows what its parts are made of, right? It's like we know that it's like the visual ones, and this is actually, I think, going to be interestingly limiting for them, and why. Anyway, we'll go into that more later, and why I think it's going to be actually not great for 2D animation, but is it doesn't know it, like that whole idea that it doesn't know what a horse's legs are, so it can't replicate six legs. The 3D model in a computer, that's still that's still a machine learning, but that's a virtual machine learning inside a thing.
Yeah, because it understands X, Y, and Z.
It understands 3D space.
Like
it
transition
understands
models.
that it exists.
Yeah.
And it can then use physics, and it understands physics. And then by trial and error, it can achieve its goal. The visual ones, they're not even doing that, right? They're just using 2D pixels and making associations. And now there are people that are I'm sure that there's people working on AI 3D animations. I'm sure that's being done somewhere.
Sure.
Why wouldn't
Yeah, of course.
Oh, it's already
been implemented.
being used, kind of thing. Like, and AI is being applied to more than like entirely generated kind of stuff. I was looking up examples of AI already in practice, and AI is used for secondary, for flow, for a lot of 3D models. Like the AI is generating all of that hair, all of those dress swinging, and stuff.
Yeah, it's
And-
it's been used for like forever. It's like it's just like a simulation is technically AI,
Yeah.
like a simulation of
Because again-
cloth or particles or whatever.
And that's why I keep coming back to calling it machine
Got it
learning and not
everywhere.
AI, because AI attributes an intelligence which it's not.
Yeah.
It's not
There's an
intelligent.
individuality.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not intelligent. It's just simulating. It's learned a specific pattern and it has figured out how to replicate. It's been taught to replicate a specific pattern. That's not the same thing as intelligence, and it's
Right.
a weirdly crucial difference.
Oh, it is.
So you said that you have been working in ChatGPT. You've been messing around with ChatGPT quite a bit, yes? Have you started to see the walls
Oh,
of
God,
it
yeah.
yet? Have you started to notice repeating
Oh, God, yeah.
messages or like,
Oh yeah.
It was
yeah, because there's only so much. It's huge what it is. Don't get me wrong, but when you start trying to ask it different creative questions, you start seeing roundabout questions, and that's of course they put in their like limitations
Yeah.
on it in order to control it, because put anything in the public, people the first thing they do is abuse it. But there's a lot of times when I found like I asked it 5 different questions and they all gave me the same answer because its pool of information on that subject is limited. It can't think of more.
well,
past
and worse than that,
Right.
it can
worse than that, it has it's confidently delusional.
Oh yeah.
It's confidently wrong all the time, and it did.
Yeah.
I think-
Like it sounds correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds right
Oh, yeah.
until you like
Knowledge
fact
is
check it, and then you're
good
like,
to know,
okay, it's a little fucked up.
Yeah.
It's not correct at all.
Yeah. and even with like even the visual ones, like you'll get it to, it still has associations, right? It still has. It is for all that it can do, and it can do some incredible things, and it's going to change the art. It's going to change art, and it's going to change writing, and it's going to change and our industry. Blah, 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 blah. It absolutely is, but it's not
Yes.
the like panacea that a lot of people think it is, and it's not as big a threat in some ways as a lot of, anyway, depending on what your job is.
So that was the main reason I want to talk to you guys, is like I've heard the stories of people like, like the introduction of 3D animation in the 90s. People are like, oh, industry's done. And then I've heard the stories of people being like the 06, 07, where people are like, oh, okay, we're losing paper and pen, or paper and pencil. All right, we're going to digital puppetry. Animation's done.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it just changes. So it's like,
It
okay,
evolves.
is this the same thing, or is it something different?
I was using the example of when the calculator came along, and you probably had mathematicians saying like, oh, like this thing's gonna like, it's either going to be a nothing burger or like people aren't going to want to use that. They need somebody who knows math, but like when you can calculate everything that guy did in a day in an hour, it becomes a tool, and people have integrated it into their jobs. Jobs have changed. Career paths have been affected by new tools introduced all throughout history.
Right.
And this is a dramatic new tool coming into this industry. And yes, I am an animator and I hate saying these things, but it's going to replace jobs or change them. So it's not going to destroy the industry, but people's titles or what they do is going to change. And it'll introduce some people to having to do new things. Like you're still making something, but it may not be what we're used to.
Right.
Like when rigs and models came in and displaced a lot of traditional artists.
To me, it sounds like you guys think like it's going to impact the animation industry, but just not in the way that people fear.
Well, I think it depends on what people, right? I think the biggest impact, I think, is going to be on like designers, like character designers, location design, because again, it's like if you throw stuff into there, it's really good at creating vague ideas. It's really good. If you want 100 concept thumbnails for scary trees for your haunted forest episode of your show, and you need 1,000 concept thumbnails, holy shit,
Mhm.
instantaneously.
Yeah.
Right. So for concept
Right.
artists, designers, it's going to do two things. It's going to make some of their jobs way faster and better. There's going to be certain concept artists and designers that suddenly one of the most time consuming and trial and error parts of their job is going to just be dealt with. It's just going to be a non-issue, right? And that's going to make concept art and design and all that sort of stuff for those artists who adapt. Those artists' jobs are going to get way faster, way more efficient, and way better. And they're going to be able to do work faster. They're going to do a better job in less time. They're going to be able to charge less money, right? And meanwhile, then what's going to happen is suddenly your studio or your design house or your whatever, you, instead of maybe needing a design crew of 12 people, maybe you only need 9 or 6 because they're able to do the same amount of work in the same amount of time. So it's just like, that's certainly going to happen. Like that's just going to happen, right?
Yeah.
In whatever ratio or to whatever
time.
degree or whatever. That's 100%.
Right.
It's already happening, right?
Yeah.
But I think, I think it's going to be a combination of, it's going to make some people's jobs a lot easier and it's going to make some people's jobs obsolete.
So it's a tool. It's going to be absolutely used by people. Like the amount you can look up references on something. Actually, if I just grab something right now, quick. I got this book series, How to Think When You Draw. You ever heard of those? Really great. It's literally just a library of, if you need ideas for bird wings, sure. Need something for chapter page, of course.
Google Images.
It's just a pile of tips, tricks, and like random collection screen effects. It's got every subject under the sun, and it's just a pile of ideas to get you started on one point perspective kind of things. These books, I love them because whenever somebody asks me to draw an old decrepit tree, I look up trees on something. AI, this thing that we're generating and people using it as a tool in a studio, they're technically doing the digital version of what I just did with a book. But it's so much faster that, of course, like it's going to be a predominant tool that people are going to be using. Everybody's up in arms about copyright, about stealing art and stuff like that, that they're swearing off it. And I will admit, I was on the bandwagon of saying, like, no to AI art when I started this. But the more I looked into it, the more I started approaching it like a tool instead of a job replacer, and how that drastically makes a difference. So, like, if I'm generating something by using like grabbing everything from Google and then generating art, yeah, that's technically stealing art. But if I am putting my own art, so I've done 2D animation drawings, and I don't want to do the in betweens. I used a Dane app, which is another one which just basically predicts what's between each 2 frames and auto generated the in betweens. And they're even, so if you got slow and slow outs, it's not gonna do much for you. But it got me 90% of the way there, and then I just have to clean up where it couldn't figure out what this was between the hand rotation or something. And it turned my 12 frames into 24 frames in 10 minutes. And that is using my own art, using my own input, and using it as something to help better my stuff. It didn't take away from my original inputs. So there is ways you can use it, but it's always you got to think of how it will be abused.
I think there's an element of like, and I was on that bandwagon too, and to a certain degree, I think that's fair because this was someone is making money using a thing. They made a tool that then they trained on a bunch of artists' work and then made money from that. And there's an
Right.
element, there's a moral element there of like, that's not right. However, I don't think that's going to be the long-term effect. I think it's like what you said. Like if you look at what, I don't know if you guys saw the thing that the Corridor Digital did
Yeah.
with the sort of
The rock paper scissors.
Yeah.
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now again, there's a little part of me that's like, oh my god, this is crazy, and I'm like, also this is a full professional effects studio with access to all of these resources and skills and so on and so forth. So like,
Yeah.
let's take this with a grain of salt. But they did do it at the end of the day, regardless of their skill and investment and resources. They did do it. However, they still only did that thing. They did this new thing, but it doesn't look like any of the things that exist. So
Right.
now that's cool, but all that didn't. They created a new type of animation, and that's great. Harmony, and Flash. Well, Flash and then Harmony. Well, actually, no. Terry Gilliam invented a new kind of animation. Which
Let's go into it. Let's go.
But Terry Gilliam perfected it. But let's just say, like, there's
learn your history.
Learn your history, kids.
Yeah, let's do it.
Terry Gilliam popularized cutout animation, and in the West, and then South Park took it. Flash did it. Harmony has monetized it. But that's a new type of animation. It's a new type of animation. It's not traditional 2D. It's not 3D. It's not whatever, right? And so are we going to end up in the next couple of years where someone's going to invent a new type of animation, or maybe what the Corridor crew did, maybe that is the new type of animation? Cool. Okay. Yeah. And will that potentially take work away from a different thing? Maybe that will be less traditional animation because, just like Harmony took away from 2D traditional, so on and so forth. But as Brian said, like, this is happening all the time. It's happening all the time. There's always new things coming. The buggy whip manufacturers, tried to stop the creation of the automobile because they knew that their, horse usage would go down, and their entire, suddenly they weren't going to be selling any whips to the buggy drivers because they wouldn't have horses anymore.
Right.
So it's not that being afraid for your job going away isn't fair. It is fair. Your job might go away. But there's going to be other things too. There's going to be it's Shiva. There's going to be creation and destruction.
Well, the hard part is when you just expect people to naturally adapt to a change, because you get into a career and you adjust to it. Do you remember 5 years ago, the coal miners down in the States who were all lost their jobs, and the journal's response was learn to code, kind of thing. That was a huge back and forth. There was a big argument over it, but the whole thing was you were just taking people whose entire lives was working with their hands and then tell them, just learn how to use a computer. Come on. And expecting them to adapt. Artists, we have so many amazing hand-drawn artists who lost their careers because they just didn't adapt to computers. It was foreign to them, and many of them tried. I've seen some who struggled, and they really did try to stay in, but they just couldn't because that wasn't their bread and butter. And this could kick off another one of those very easily, because you have a lot of people who know all the squash and stretch, all the animation principles, but the software now has a button for that. And if AI is doing the template, if it's doing the story, if it's doing all the in-betweens, and the AI generates the character rigs, and your goal is just to make sure the elbows don't go flying, and that's all your job is at the end of it. I'm kind of doom and glooming it now. But it's kind of true. The thing is that there's so many different angles I want to approach this on, because there's also like I have a 9-year-old and I'm watching her get into art, but I'm also seeing how she wants to skip things because a kid doesn't want to wait for anything.
No.
She's doing little silly animations just because she wants to do like dad kind of thing. And the computer is doing half the work for her because if I sat her down and said, no, you got to flip that paper and you have to keep the volumes correct, like she'll be done. She will
Sure.
go outside
Yeah,
kind
of
of thing
course. Yeah,
so fast.
she loses interest really quickly from doing that.
So the amount of skills that we had to learn growing up in order to get into this industry, and then we adapted ourselves onto computers. If the next generation is using shortcuts and AI to generate all of it, how much skills will they have of what we knew that will even be of value to them? Like some of us see it, every generation sees the new generation is losing knowledge and losing skills that they perfected,
Right.
and they're taking too many shortcuts to get to the end result. And we see it as no, no, we learned enough skills in order for us to do what we need to do. And if the AI is going to generate 3/4 of a TV show in the future, they're not going to see the value in learning the animation principles or anything that's part of the current expectations of an animator. It's a weird concept to try to think in the mindset of 10 years from now,
Yeah.
the kids now as young adults.
Right.
And I don't want to call them lazy. I do
No.
not, but just
But you just did.
not make the effort to learn what a computer can do. Yeah.
Well, the thing is like you're always gonna have those studios like Studio Ghibli. They're like, no, this is the diehard way we're gonna do it. Like you're gonna have those diehards. They're gonna put their stake in the sand. Be like, no, this is how we do it, right? And then you're gonna have other studios who are like, no, or we're gonna embrace quote unquote innovation, right? Like there, I don't remember what that cartoon is. It's on Netflix where it's very much it's an anime where it's very much just like key poses. You going from one key pose to another to another to another. And it looks very cheap, and I'm sure it is
Mm.
like relatively very cheap. And they're like, well, it's efficient. And you're like, well, technically you are correct. Depending on your view of it, it's efficient or it's cheap, right? And I think that's what right now AI is going to be used as is like a cheaper option for animation at the moment
Well,
until it learns
Yeah.
until there's
Go
like
ahead.
physics and anatomy and things like that, which is not I in my opinion I don't think it's that much of a stretch to learn these concepts,
I think that
at least in the 3D realm.
it's hard to predict the technology. I think that ironically, stylized 2D animation is actually going to be one of the last things it figures out. I'm not saying it won't do
You
it.
think so?
I'm not saying it won't do it because it doesn't
Yeah.
follow rules, right? 2D, even in
Right.
Harmony, it sorry, what I mean is the animation doesn't follow rules. It's intuitive.
Right. Yeah.
And so even Harmony
Yeah.
animation,
There's always exemptions.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's still intuitive. There are some
Yeah.
rules there, but the visuals, the visual part of it, what makes it all work together. And at the end of the day, even intuition is a complex set of rules. So, theoretically, sure.
Right.
But with a 3D model, especially if you're going to program it and teach it in 3D and it knows where its bones are and it knows where its joints are and it knows what physics is and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
And you can program it in styles of animation and how much it's a lot easier. That's why things like fluid simulation and cloth simulation and hair simulation, all that stuff works in 3D. None of it works in 2D. None of it. People have been trying for my entire career. For 20 years, people have been trying to figure out ways of making cloth simulation and hair simulation and lip sync simulation. It's been 20 years of digital animation, and they still can't do lip sync, and they've been trying for 20 years.
Oh yeah, like I don't remember how many times I see like the advertisement for Adobe being like, "We've perfected lip sync animation through this easy tool," and I'm like, that is total horseshit.
Sure.
your lip sync is fucking horrible.
Right. And that's
It's not great.
Oh yeah. Well, its styles change. In 2D, everyone draws differently, so every style, so they can't build a template that just slaps on. Video games are the source of a lot of the auto rigging
Yeah.
for 3D, is because most things are 2 arms, 2 legs. Even if it's a big hulking creature, they can add a spine and just a line throughout most of it, and somebody can manually add in the extra hoofs or extra arms into it afterwards, and it can do 90% of the animation that way. But 2D, that beaver's arms are little triangles, and then the next character has like fully formed arms. It can't use the same rules.
I think you could make an analogy between 3D and 2D. You could look at the difference between mocap and rotoscope. So if you look at mocap, you can use mocap for all kinds of stuff, right? You go do some 3D mocap, you can use that and you can apply it to all kinds of things, because at the end of the day, all 3D animation is, not all, commercially. In the West, all commercial 3D animation is done the same, with IK skeletal rigs that follow physics.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, that's what all of it is. And so because of that, you can capture that data, morph it and change it, but map it to an IK skeleton in 3D space that follows physics. 2D animation is not like that, and it never has been. When was the last time somebody rotoscoped something? Right? And it does happen occasionally, but rotoscoping only works with one style. Rotoscoping works with hyper realistic Disney style. That's or some anime. Okay, I'm excluding anime. There's lots of anime that does it, but rotoscoping only works with hyper realistic, which is the least popular form of 2D animation.
Yeah, and generally, I find like rotoscoping has a bad rap.
Yes,
too. We're like, oh, it's just cheating. Well, like, oh, you're just cheating. You're not animating.
Yes, and it's not necessarily any faster. Like, that's the other thing, too, right? Like, motion capture is arguably, in a lot of ways, you can tweak motion capture and get some extremely realistic animation. But rotoscoping is arguably not any faster than just hand drawing it. And you certainly can't rotoscope or mocap in, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, what's the generic show we were working on there? Loud House.
Oh,
how are you going to, what tools can you use?
How are you going to
No, there's genuinely no way. And that's after decades and decades and decades of people trying. Since the computer was invented, since Jurassic Park broke stop motion, people have been like, oh my God, computers, we can do, you know. And that's what I'm saying is 2D, because of the way that 2D design exists, the way that, as Brian said, every show is different. Right. And so even if you did a first, maybe you could get to the point where you could do a first season and then train a special AI on your first season to do part of your second season. It's still going to work once.
So that's actually a point I wanted to make about the algorithms and the AIs as well. Think of the Unreal engines for video games kind of thing. You can make any game in there, but video game engines, eventually you can tell what engine that game was, because you recognize a game when it comes out. You're like, hey, that looks like that last game kind of thing, because it's using the same tools. Same with other softwares that do similar. I think this is a prediction of our AI coming down the road, or for ChatGPT or Midjourney or whatever it is. As it is using a pool of all the art that other people have made and bringing it in, when a next generation of artists come in, and I'm just generalizing, but when more and more people start using AI art from this software, just say they stick to Midjourney, we're going to start seeing it repeating and repeating, and then it's not going to be as creative.
Yeah, you already seen it doing that.
It's going to be always. I think we are going to start starving for new artists at one point, because so many people will be pulling out of the same machine so
Mhm.
much that it's like when all the websites start using the same template and they all start looking the same again. And it's just the creativity's gone. And then they're dying for fresh ideas, fresh artists to come out with something that isn't in that algorithm. And you could have like a second explosion of art of people when they realize, oh, maybe we should learn to draw again or learn
Sure.
to
Yeah,
create.
there'll be like a
And
new
so,
renaissance type of thing of like, oh, let's
kind
relearn
of,
the
yeah.
arts. Yeah.
And then the AI will steal all that new art and put it back
Yeah,
into
yeah.
their template.
That's the new revolution, you know. It will come happen.
Yeah,
All right. Oh fuck. So do you guys view it as an asset that will be only used in film, or will be used across the board of television and
Oh, it'll
film?
be,
Or is it like a
I
big
think it's
budget?
already everywhere.
Yeah, think it'll be
I
across
think
the
it'll
board.
start in film because it'll be expensive, and people won't know what to do.
Sure.
Oh, for animation,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's risky. I think a lot of to make a successful, fully generated, auto-generated, either film or show kind of thing, will be ballsy, and will whoever makes it will need a budget to keep it on track, or it'll just be this ugly mesh of a nightmare.
Mhm.
Like if there's no control over it at all, I think it would be not as good as people would expect it to be, but people would be impressed with the first attempt at it. And over time, it will get better and better at pumping out episodes. But it's like that Funny Bot episode of South Park where the robot is like, "How about another film of Adam Sandler?" But now he's in love with a parakeet. Like it'll just start churning out random ideas instead of good
But
ideas.
I mean,
'Cause
to a
it's
degree, dude, we're
they-
already there. Like, I don't know if you've seen Disney's repertoire over the last few years, but like,
Unfortunately.
you know, there's already. I mean, there's an element of like, to a degree, people want derivative. I mean, this is the balance, right? This is the flip side of it is people like derivative, and companies love derivative.
So, case in point, another thing I forgot to mention, a little on topic, is, but it's true that you can't predict the audience's interests half the time. But memes and like internet jokes is a perfect example of people don't care for the arts as much as people think when they're looking for something entertaining.
Yeah.
People, like when you look at these images online or these videos, like my kid loves YouTube, loves these, like I would try to get her to sit down with me and watch a beautifully animated film with me. It's like, oh, this has got such a heartwarming story. No, she wants to watch the 3-hour loop of a cartoon cat that's just doing backflips and screaming. Like she thinks it's funny, kind of thing. And there is an aspect of, when I say we're losing a lot of art and skills as people move to AI, or like a lot of people start using the algorithms to generate new stuff, I think people forget that there's going to be a whole wave of people that are interested in that art
Right.
and are going to accept it and welcome it in. That was what anime was. Anime, traditional artists and a lot of traditional animators in the 90s were confused and disgusted by anime, which was just held frames for like a minute straight and just the mouth flapping.
Sure.
And it was like, what is this? Like, this isn't art at all. But kids were like, this is the best animation on the planet.
Well, it was pencil economy, right? It was like, all right, we have to reserve the amount of animation we can do, so let's just do a bunch of fucking exposition.
It was Tezuka. It was the guy who made Astro Boy. It's all his fault.
Yeah.
No. He was the one who budgeted that show to hell because he was a passionate artist who wanted to make his show, but he accidentally made the template for almost all anime to map out how they're going to pay people pennies and how much limited animation there was. And we had that here. We had Rocket Robin Hood, if you ever remember that
Oh
show,
yeah.
which was just like the walking was just one image where it was like somebody doing like this
Yeah.
across the page.
It was
kind of
like
thing.
Poochie
And-
going home, just like boop 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 boop.
Yeah,
I'm going back to my home planet.
Yeah, you're like,
yeah.
oh god, I remember
And
watching that.
but if you have an audience that embraces that, like I was an anime kid, I was amazed by those things when I first saw them. And yeah, I was a sucker for just the characters who are just trying to have a serious conversation while everything indoors is floating sideways, waving in the wind for some reason.
Sure.
And when you look back at it after learning animation, going to school and all that, I see so many skills and art poured into animation and traditional films and stuff that has been lost in new shows that are very popular. I just want to segue that to what we have now, where we're looking at all of our animation and all of our skills that we have now being replaced by AI. And it's like we're going down with the ship trying to point at, we're sinking while they're all being fascinated by the new stuff.
Sure.
And they're just like, no, this is cool. This is awesome. I really like it. It's shiny. So it's the shiny new thing. It's.
So then, do you guys see it as disruptor or just distraction then in the industry? Then
Well, it's both.
I go for it.
both.
It's both for sure. I mean,
Go for it,
I
Logan.
think it's absolutely a distraction because it's shiny and cool, and it's
Right.
it's Bitcoin. It's
Yeah.
it's yeah. I mean, it's shiny Bitcoin with both a disruptor and a distraction.
Right.
And valid technology at the same time. Like it was real
Well-
and valid and a distraction and a massive disruption. And this will be too.
Yeah.
And I think there are going to
But can you see it as a tool to be
of course.
used?
No, it doesn't.
Or is it just
you have to. You absolutely have to. It doesn't matter how you feel about it.
Yeah.
If you it's the
Mhm.
sort of like there's an element of practicality of like if you want to refuse. I don't begrudge people their sort of stubborn morality. I have my stubborn morality.
Right.
I refuse to give Disney
Yeah.
my money. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They don't
Yeah.
care. They're not interested
No,
at all. It
they don't
makes
care.
no difference to them. I don't pay for Disney Plus. I don't see Marvel or Star Wars movies in the theater. Blah 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 blah. I just morally, I have a moral problem with the way that Disney operates and what they do, and I refuse to give them my money. Now, I don't think that matters. I don't think that I'm making
No.
a difference. I'm doing that entirely selfishly for
Right.
myself. And if someone wants to morally for themselves decide not to do anything with AI art and they are willing to pay whatever price for the person, I don't mean money price, but I mean like a personal price. Like I don't get to see Marvel movies in the theater. Like if they're going to pay whatever that moral price is for themselves and they don't want to use AI art, I have all the support in the world for them. I absolutely think that makes sense. I totally get it. And I totally support you.
Mhm.
However, that is not a hill I'm willing to die on. Doesn't mean you shouldn't
Okay.
be. It doesn't mean that it isn't reasonable that someone will. But I think Pandora's box is open. The horses are out of the barn. I feel like I've missed an analogy there, but or mixed up my cliches. But no, I think it's too
Yeah.
late. That we don't.
Right.
If you would like to be involved in the animation industry in the next 10 years,
Mhm.
you'd better buckle
Mhm.
in or get out of the way. Basically,
Right.
like I don't. It's
Yeah.
not. It is a tool. It is here. It is going to affect. Again, I think it's going to affect 2D animation, which all three of us are. I would be very curious to
Mhm.
see. I've already seen the YouTube video of the guy that come up with a script with ChatGPT, or sorry, a prompt,
Yeah.
uses that prompt in Midjourney to design a character, uses another tool I don't remember
Yeah.
the name of that converts that character into a 3D model, then goes back to Midjourney to create the texture for that model, and then is able to create a 3D
Yeah.
animation genuinely all using AI. Now it was crap, but he still
Yeah.
did it. And so I
But
feel this
it's
for the
it's a beta
3D,
type,
but for
right?
2D,
Yeah.
I actually think I think it's going to be harder to get into 2D with the AI, but it is going to happen.
Maybe. Yeah, it's gonna happen. Like my theory is like it's gonna happen, and it's not. I don't think it's gonna be like 15, 20
No.
years. I think it's gonna be like shorter frame, like
As soon as
5,
Harmony,
if not
as soon
sooner.
as Toon Boom figures out how to do a poor job of it, it'll be in there.
Well, the thing to me is like AI doesn't learn like a human. Like it's not progressive learning where it's like a steep roller
No.
coaster. It's like it's a step learning, right? It fails, fails, fails. Oh, I figured it out. Fail, fail, fail. Oh, I figured it out, and then it keeps that knowledge, and you're like, oh fuck, now it knows.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be how it does it, right? And so it'll be a matter of
Right.
someone will come along and go, oh, like Brian's sort of talking about like rigging and stuff like that. It's like, yeah,
Right.
okay, except if automating rigging, we don't need AI to do automated rigging, right? And this is
Right.
the problem is, again, it's part
Yeah.
of how I think it'll affect concept, and I think it'll affect design. It might affect BG artists. It might, there could be those sorts
Yeah.
of things. But I think it's going to be a while
Yeah.
before we see it. But we are going to see it, and we're either going to
Mhm.
be ready, and you have to be prepared to adapt to it, whatever form it
Mhm.
takes. Whether maybe it'll be in production tools, maybe it'll replace producers, because it's all
Yeah.
budgeting and
Who
pattern
knows?
recognition
Yeah.
and schedules, like
Yeah. Predictions.
predictions
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be hilarious if it
there's the
replaced producers?
for it, it'll be able
So
to do it.
then, do you guys see it as a possible way, as a disruption for people coming out of school, having a hard time getting their foot in the door with an AI, say, with the ability to like do a crowd shot, do all these shots like animators don't want to do? We want to focus on like
Not yet.
the money shots.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Absolutely,
No.
theoretically, there are some right
Theoretically.
now. There are some enterprising young nerds who are part programmer geek and part artist, and they are just finishing animation,
Yeah.
or they're in animation school, or they've just graduated, or they've just been laid off, or
Yeah.
whatever, and they are experimenting, and they're going to get hooked, and they're going to get really good at it, and they're going to figure something out. Absolutely, for sure,
Right.
those people exist, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think, again, I say all of this, and Midjourney 6 could come along next week and absolutely completely disprove everything I've said.
Sure. Yeah. AI is so evolving so quickly that you're like, I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen next. That's why I want to
The
talk to
curve
people.
has gone from
So
a
it's like-
ramp
Yeah.
to just
And I guess that's maybe the
Yeah.
ultimate thing that I'm trying to get at very poorly in a roundabout way is, I think if you want to continue to have a career in this, and we're all 2D TV people, and maybe for any animator, I don't know, but certainly for us, if you want to continue your career, keep going, but be ready. You have to be ready.
Yeah.
Do some research, even if you
have to be able
hate
to
it.
pivot.
If you want to keep being relevant, you better keep an eye on it at least. At least keep one eye on it, so that when it comes, you're like, hey guys, we've introduced, like Brian, you were talking about those traditional animators, the old dogs that could not learn the new tricks. And I think that might be the best little piece of prophetic advice is, okay, well, as soon as you see that stuff, are you going to go into denial? As soon as, with the AI popping off, there's going to be the artists and animators who go into denial and, rail against the dying of the light. And there's going to be those that embrace it. And the people that embrace it are probably going to be the ones who still have a job in 20 years.
Well, think of, have you ever seen Aaron Blaze's channel?
No.
Aaron Blaze worked on Brother
I know the
Bear
name,
and
but-
lots of
Okay.
Disney. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But he started a YouTube channel where he's just doing either traditional drawings, or he loves live reference of animals and stuff, like big cats, tigers, and bears and stuff. And he'll just sit there and talk about the industry. He adapted to like a streamer kind of thing, where he's still getting to do his art. He's still getting to. He's always. Well, he's not always, but he's plugging his website where you can buy prints of his stuff and other things like. Aaron, hit me up for advertisement. No. No, but I mean, like, he's just an example of the industry changed, and instead of condemning it and saying it's not what it used to be,
Mhm.
he found a way to make it his own and just adapt and keep going.
Sure.
So I think, like, I'm luck. I'm lucky enough to be able to, like, I'm animating on Loud House,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got to do both animation and design work for different shows
Mhm.
at our studio, and uh, just the chance to be able to draw again is rare on the animation side because it's
Sure.
all rigs.
Yeah.
And sometimes it calls for they need special posers, which are just to help guide the storyboards to the animators, just clean up some pictures to make things look a lot nicer so they know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky enough to be able to do that. So having a chance to draw again in the studio is so awesome. And I feel like a lot of people are missing out on those skills. And as we move to AI, where people are feeling like you don't need those skills anymore, I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I can remember trying to start art jams at school and hearing so many people who said, "Oh, after I graduated from college and got the job, I just don't draw anymore,"
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And they don't feel like they need it. But when they called for they need a designer in for a certain show, it the people who still draw are a mile ahead of the
Mm-hmm.
people who stopped and just let the computer do everything.
Oh,
Sure.
sure, but
So they
I don't think you're ever gonna. I
absolutely.
mean, this is the thing, right? Is I don't think we're ever gonna lose those people who. There's people who are drawing because they love it. We've got a junior on our crew, and he's quite junior. He's very junior. His
Mm-hmm.
age still ends in teen. He's that junior,
Oh,
and
yeah. Pretty
yeah,
junior.
like I
Yeah.
mean a junior, and
Yeah. Junior. Junior.
and
Pretty green.
he's super green. But the reality,
Yeah.
I've been around long enough now. I've seen a few things in my years, and
Yeah.
and I know. But the thing is, he's super excited. He's super engaged.
Mm-hmm.
He asks a
Mm-hmm.
lot of questions, and he's
Perfect.
interested. And genuinely, if I think about all the best animators I know, that's their defining traits. Their defining traits are
Yeah.
that they're interested. They're asking. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
animators that are 40 years old and they're still like, hey, I wonder, like they're asking questions. Oh, yeah.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
engaged, right? That they're asking questions and they're
Right.
not assuming. Maybe they have a bit of imposter syndrome still, and
Yeah.
so I look at this particular animator and I'm like, he's very green. He's got a lot to learn, but I absolutely believe he will, right? Because he's got so much passion, he's got so much
Mm-hmm.
drive, he's got so much
Motivation.
I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
chutzpah,
Chutzpah. Yeah.
motivation. And the reality is that's
There,
the guy that's going to
Yeah. Sure.
succeed because he's going to
Yeah.
succeed. Like regardless of what those skills end up
Mm-hmm.
being,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of what those talents, what
well,
the
yeah,
demands
there's
are,
always you're
he's
going to
going to
find
succeed because he's
motivational people
going to.
like that all the time. There was a guy who there was somebody on I think it was just on YouTube. I can't remember if it was on Facebook or YouTube, but I just stumbled onto his animations that he was doing, and they were just taking a simple rig and kind of messing around with them. And they were like, yeah, not bad. You see a lot of them come and go. But then I saw more of him, and out of that channel, he was half the animations. He just kept going. He kept working at it. And I just saw him grow and grow,
Yep.
and it was almost like I was watching
Yep.
his skills. Like I could see his developing on his own, and this is before he's in a studio and before he's doing anything else. And I'm just looking at him, going like, someone's going to hire
Yep.
him just because they're just gonna this and go like, I want him, kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Yep. I I hired a girl this year again, junior, green, whatever.
Yeah.
Not great, but I mean, you're green. Of course you're not, of course you aren't. And I genuinely not, I mean, was pretty good. Like, I'm very lucky. Like, I say, even like on my crew, I say like not
Right.
very good, or I say green or whatever. They're actually, I was really lucky that I got a really like interesting selection of juniors. I was able to turn away a lot of
Perfect.
people.
Yeah.
So they're I'm very lucky in that they are very good compared to the
Sure.
field.
Yeah.
But anyway, and this one girl, again, I hired her because my defining answer was like, she finished her own personal project
Mhm.
outside of school, finished it entirely by
Perfect.
herself, done, painted, colored,
Yeah.
edited,
The discipline.
done entirely herself.
Yeah.
Just finished a project
Yeah.
on her own. I've
Yeah.
never done that. And so right there was like, boom. And now thankfully she's also like improving and becoming a better animator, and so exactly what you would expect. But that was why we hired her. And I said that my producer and I were sort of talking about like, should we put this many juniors on the team, and so on and so on.
Mm.
And it was literally like, it was their character that made the decision, not their
Yeah.
skills. Because if you have the right character and you've got the right sort of soft skills,
As long as you have
and I think that's going to be true with AI as well. It's going to be exactly the same thing. If you're motivated to do it, if you're open to new ideas, if you're interested in learning, I mean, it's like, that's almost like cliche life. Like, let's write a self-help book.
Yeah. You want that solid base foundation. As long as you have that foundation, then you can learn anything. It's fine.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
So then, as a final question, who would you guys like to hear from next? Involving AI. Like, who would you want to hear from? An expert, or like, who would you want to hear from about AI in the industry specifically? If you were curious about something.
I think as kind of a counter position would be like heads of studios getting their input would be an interesting angle. Like if you were getting both sides, because if you just hear the people calling the shots will have a different view of animation completely from the people at the bottom who are coming up, and definitely would be an interesting back and forth perspective. So I don't have an exact name off the top of my head, though.
I think that's a really good answer. It would be, someone who is detached from the creative side of it, who's not, or I mean, I think even a head of studio would not be completely detached from the creative side.
Yeah.
That's not fair. But what I mean is like that there's we can sit here and talk about the artistic integrity and the moral implications of reusing and the creative endeavors and passion for your craft. And that's all very important stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a business. We all work in a business. And at the end of the day, if there isn't business, and if there isn't money, and if there isn't profit, and like the cold hard reality is, if those things aren't there and aren't managed and aren't dealt with, we don't have jobs and we don't get to do these things. And so it would be interesting to hear from maybe not even a head of studio, but either a client producer. So like someone, I think, it would be interesting. So like someone from a broadcaster, what their perception of it was, because they're going to be even more detached, right? They're only going to be looking at market and end product and budget and, very, very different point of view. Someone maybe from production, because again, the more I think about it, I think that AI could replace producers. So I'd be curious to hear about, from a production standpoint, what their insights were. And also, because I brought it up earlier, someone from like Adobe or Toon Boom, not just a developer, but someone who's working on the tools themselves, someone who's creating, or Moho, or like, a TV Paint, like whatever, like somebody from, or Blender, maybe you get somebody from the Blender Association. I mean, I think it would be, again, because I'm myopically interested in 2D. So Blender. But someone from one of those I guarantee, and I haven't checked, but now that I've said it out loud, someone from the Blender
Sure, yeah.
Association is making an
For
AI
sure.
as we
Like
speak.
Maya's doing their thing, Adobe's
So,
doing their thing. They're all working on it secretly.
right. They're all
Yeah.
doing their thing. But I'd be really interested to hear from someone at, at Toon Boom or at Adobe or at
Okay.
Moho, sort of, and hear them and be like, yeah, here's our
Okay.
plan, or here's what we're thinking we could do. That would be I think that would be in a way the most interesting, because it would be, that's practical. It's interesting to hear what we think maybe could be if, and the same thing from a studio head who's really still detached from it.
Okay.
It's tricky with,
but somebody's going to make us these tools.
Just expanding again, but the amount of backlash that came from DeviantArt trying to implement AI tools, when suddenly everybody who's been using the site just got signed up for, we're using your art to make an auto generator, and didn't they said, well, you can opt out of it, kind of thing. So I'm just trying to make the point that when the tool, like these people who are creating these tools, it's a minefield for half of them to not get the backlash of people's perception on AI art right now. It's very touchy for some software, probably, where they really they have all these ideas that they really want to implement, but it could blow up in their face if they just get the ire of the public to just not like it or something.
Like, I think there's three basic ways any person, especially in our industry, can look at it. You can ignore it / be angry about it. You can dive into it head deep and be part of it right now, part of creating that industry. So, you could be like those people who are doing it right now, who are making AI art and AI animation and making money off of it and figuring it out. Those people exist. So you can be one of those people, or you can be what I'm going to do, which is pay attention and be ready for what happens, and just pay attention and just be ready. Because I think it's going to, those first people are going to try are going to be out of luck, honestly, or they're going to go do something else, or they're going to find their own way, and good for them. And genuinely, I feel like I'm sounding dismissive, and I don't want to, because it's a reasonable reaction. That second group of people, they're going to be the ones who decide what the answers to all these questions are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. All the stuff we've been talking about and speculating about and thinking about, that second group of people are going to be the ones who answer the question. And I'm simply not interested in doing that.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for, Logan. I'm just like, let's find this answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please, by all means, let me know when you've got some clarity on that.
We'll do a second round. I'm like, all right, this is what I found out. We're all fucked.
Absolutely. Exactly. We'll do the roundup. But I think that for most of us, it's going to be that third one. It's going to be the third one of like, okay, I'm going to keep an eye on this, and I'm going to be ready, and I'm not going to be in denial, and I'm not going to pretend, and I'm not going to maybe, and you can even still be angry about it and still be ready for it, right? Like, I mean, I am the king of complaining. I'll probably still be frustrated and cranky when it happens.
Yeah. Well, people always
I'm also
change
going to do
over
my
time
best
as
to
well.
be ready
Like one of the things that about the doom and gloom, what kicked me off a lot of it, because I've been pessimistic on some topics quite a bit, but it's kind of like you're in a car going down a highway, and down the road you can see your lane is going off a cliff. And every time somebody in the car is screaming, we're all going to die, one is denying it, saying, no, we're fine. And then the driver just changes lanes. And then the person who said we're fine is like, see, I told you. And the other person who is screaming is now just looking down the road for the next cliff that you're going to drive off. So you're going to have people from every angle always.
And that's it. I think that in that analogy, I guess what I'm saying is be the person who changes lanes. That's my, in that analogy. I like that analogy. In that analogy, that's what I'm recommending is what I maybe is good life advice, good general life advice. Just fucking pay attention. Just pay attention. Try to be ready.
So it sounds like from two animators in the field that it's better to be adaptive rather than reluctant or fully change lanes. Just be observant of what's in front of you.
The attention
Pay
is
attention.
integrating
Alright.
machine learning.
Well,
Perfect.
that's it. One down. I want to thank Brian and Logan for helping me on the maiden voyage of this podcast. And I want to thank you, the Phantom listeners, for sticking around and listening to us ramble for about an hour about the possible futures of AI in the animation industry. Come check in next time as we discuss more about the topic. Don't forget, keep your eyes on the horizon.
Goodbye. Aborting transmission.